Chapter 7 of Animal Farm. It was a bitter winter. The stormy weather was followed by sleet and snow and then by hard frost, which did not break well until February. The animals carried on as best they could with the rebuilding of the windmill, well knowing that the outside world was watching them and that the envious human beings would rejoice and triumph if the mill were to not finish on time. Out of spite, the human beings were pretending not to believe that it was Snowball who destroyed their windmill. They instead said that the windmill had just fallen down because the walls were too thin. The animals knew that this was not the case, though. Still, it had been decided to build the walls 3 feet thick this time instead of 18 inches, as it was before, which meant collecting much larger quantities of stone. For a long time, the quarry was full of snowdrifts and nothing could be done. Some progress was made in the dry, frosty weather that followed, but it was cruel work, and the animals could not feel so hopeful about it as they had felt before. They were always cold and usually hungry as well. Only Boxer and Clover never lost heart. Squealer made excellent speeches on the joys of services and the dignity of labor, but the other animals found more inspiration in Boxer's strength and the never-failing cry of, "I will work harder." In January, food fell short again. The corn ration was drastically reduced, and it was announced that all the extra portion ration would be issued to make up for it. Then it was discovered that the greater part of the potato crop had been frosted in the clamps, which had not been covered thickly enough. The potatoes had become soft and discolored, and only a few more were edible. For days at a time, the animals had nothing to eat but chaff and mangles. Starvation seemed to stare them all in the face. It was vitally necessary to conceal this fact from the outside world, though. Emboldened by the collapse of the windmill, the humans began to invent new, fresh lies about Animal Farm. Once again, it was being put out there that all the animals were dying of famine and disease, and that they were continually fighting amongst themselves and resorted to cannibalism and infanticide. Napoleon was well aware of the bad results that might follow if the real facts of the food situation were known, and he decided to make use of Mr. Whymper to spread a contrary impression. Hitherto, the animals had little or no contact with Whymper on the weekly visits now. Now, however, a few selected animals, mostly sheep, were instructed to remark casually in his hearing that the rations had been increased. In addition, Napoleon ordered that almost empty beds in the store shed would be filled nearly to the brim with sand, which was then covered up with remains of grain and meal. On some suitable pretext, Whymper was led through the store shed and allowed to catch a glimpse of the bins. He was deceived and continued to report to the outside world that there was no food shortage at Animal Farm. Nevertheless, towards the end of January, it became obvious that it would be necessary to procure some more grain from somewhere. In those days, Napoleon rarely appeared in public, but he instead spent all his time in the farmhouse, which was guarded at each door by one of those fierce-looking dogs. When he did emerge, it was a ceremonial matter, with an escort of 6 dogs who closely surrounded him and grounded if anyone came too near. Frequently, he did not even appear on Sunday mornings, but issued his orders through one of those other pigs, usually Squealer. One Sunday morning, Squealer announced that the hens who had come in to lay again must surrender their eggs. Napoleon had accepted, through Whymper, a contract for 400 eggs a week. The price of these would pay for enough grain and meal to feed the farm going till summer came on and conditions were easier. When the hens heard this, they raised a terrific outcry. They had been warned earlier that the sacrifice might be necessary, but not believed that it would really happen. They were just getting their clutches ready for the spring sitting, and they protested that to take the eggs away was just murder. And for the first time since the expulsion of Jones, there was something resembling a rebellion. Led by 3 young black Minorca pullets, the hens made a determined effort to thwart Napoleon's wishes. Their method was to fly up to the rafters and there lay their eggs, which smashed to pieces on the floor. Napoleon acted swiftly, though, and ruthlessly. He ordered that the hens' rations be stopped, and he decreed that any animal giving so much as a grain of corn to a hen would be punished by death. The dogs saw that these orders were carried out, and for 5 days the hens held out. Then they capitulated and went back to their nesting boxes. 9 hens died in the meantime, though. Their bodies were buried in the orchard, and it was given out that they had died of coccidiosis. Whymper heard nothing of this affair, though, and the eggs were duly delivered. A grocer's van driving up to the farm once a week, came, and he took all the hen eggs away. All this while no more had been seen of Snowball. He was rumored to be hiding in a neighboring farm, either Foxwood or Pinchfield. Napoleon was by this time on slightly better terms with the other farmers than before. It happened that there was one in the yard, a pile of timber that had been stacked there 10 years earlier, where a beech spinnery had been cleared. It was well seasoned, and Whymper had advised Napoleon to sell it, but Mr. Plinkington and Mr. Frederick were anxious to buy it. Napoleon was hesitating between the two, unable to make up his mind. It was noticed that whenever it seemed on the point of coming to an agreement with Frederick, Snowball was declared to be in hiding at Foxwood, while, when he inclined towards Pilkington, Snowball was said to be at Pinchfield. So, suddenly, early in the spring, an alarming thing was discovered. Snowball was secretly frequenting the farm by night. The animals were so disturbed that they had hardly sleep in their stalls. Every night, it was said, he was creeping in under the cover of darkness and performed all kinds of mischief. He stole the corn. He upset the milk pails. He broke eggs. He trampled the seed beds. He gnawed the bark of the fruit trees. Whenever anything went wrong, it became usual to always attribute whatever went wrong to Snowball. If a window was broken or a drain was blocked up, something was certain to say that Snowball had come in the night and done it. And when the key of the store shed was lost, the whole farm was convinced that Snowball had thrown it down the well. Curiously, though, they went on believing this after the mislaid key had been found under a sack of meal. The cows declared unanimously that Snowball crept into their stalls and milked them in the night in their sleep. The rats, which had been troublesome in the winter, were also said to be in a league with Snowball. Napoleon decreed that there would be a full investigation into Snowball's activities. With his dogs in attendance, he set out and made a careful tour of inspection of the farm buildings. The other animals followed at a respectful distance, too. At every step, Napoleon stopped and snuffed the ground for traces of Snowball's footsteps, which he said he could detect by the smell. He snuffed in every corner and in the cow shed, in the hen house, in the vegetable gardens. He would put his snout to the ground, give several deep sniffs, and explain in a terrible voice, "Snowball! He has been here. I can smell him distinctly. Snowball!" And all the dogs let out a blood-curdling growls and showed their side teeth. The animals were thoroughly frightened. It seemed to them as though Snowball were some kind of invisible influence, pervading the air above them and menacing them with all kinds of danger. In the evening, Squealer called them together and with an alarmed expression on his face told them that he had some serious news to report. "Comrades!" cried Squealer, making little nervous skips. "A most terrible thing has been discovered. Snowball has sold himself to Frederick of Pinchfield Farm, who is even now plotting to attack us and take our farm away from us. Snowball is to act as his guide and when the attack begins. But there is worse than that. We had thought that Snowball's rebellion was caused simply by vanity and ambition, but we were wrong, comrades. Do you know what the real reason was? Snowball was in league with Jones from the very start. He and Jones had been his secret agent all the time. It has been proved by the documents which he left behind him, which we now have just discovered. To my mind, this explains a great deal, comrades. Did we not see for ourselves how he attempted, fortunately without success, to get us defeated and destroyed by the Battle of Cow's Head?" The animals were stupefied. This was a wickedness far outgoing Snowball's destruction of the windmill, but it was some minutes before they could fully take it all in. And then they all remembered, or thought they remembered, how they had seen Snowball charging ahead in the Battle of Cow's Head, how he had rallied and encouraged them all at every turn, and how he had not paused for an instant, even when the pellets from his guns would have wounded his back. At first it was a little difficult to see how this fitted with what was being said on Jones's side. Even Boxer, who seldom asked questions, was puzzled by all of this. He lay down and tucked his four hooves beneath him, shut his eyes, and with a hard effort managed to formulate his thoughts. "I do not believe that. Snowball fought bravely at the Battle of Cow's Head. I saw him myself. Did we not give him the animal hero first class immediately afterwards?" "Ah, that was our mistake, comrade, for we know now, it's all written down in the secret documents that we found, that in reality he was trying to lure us to our doom." "But he got wounded." Boxer said. "We all saw him running with blood." "That was part of their arrangement. Jones's shot only grazed him, though. I could show you this in his own writing, but unfortunately none of you guys can read. The plot was for Snowball at the critical moment to give the signal for flight and then lead the field to the enemy. And he nearly succeeded. I will even say, comrades, he would have succeeded if not been for the heroic efforts of our leader, Comrade Napoleon. Do you not remember how, just at that moment when Jones and his men got inside the yard, Snowball suddenly turned and fled, and animals followed him? Do you not remember, too, that it was just at that moment, when panic was spreading through and all seemed lost, that our comrade Napoleon sprang forward with a cry of, 'Death to humanity!' And he sank his teeth in Jones's leg. Surely you remember that, don't you, comrades?" exclaimed Squealer, frisking from side to side. Now, when Squeaker described the scene so graphically, it seemed to all the animals that they did remember it. At any rate, they remembered that the critical moment of the battle, Snowball had turned to flee, but Boxer was still a little uneasy. "I do not believe that Snowball was a traitor in the beginning. What he has done since is different, but I believe the Battle of Cal said he was a good comrade." "Well, our leader, Comrade Napoleon," announced Squealer, speaking very slowly and firmly, "has stated categorically, Conrad, that Snowball was Jones's agent from the very beginning. Yes! And from long before the rebellion was ever thought of." "Oh, well, that is different. If Comrade Napoleon says it, then it must be right." "That is the true spirit, comrade," cried Squealer, and it was noticed he cast a very ugly look at Boxer with his little twinkling eye. He turned to go, then paused and added impressively, "I warn every animal on this farm to keep his eyes wide open, for we have reason to think that Snowball's secret agents are still lurking amongst us." 4 days later in the afternoon, Napoleon ordered all the animals to assemble in the yard. When they were all gathered, Napoleon emerged from the farmhouse wearing both of his medals, for he recently awarded himself the Animal Hero First Class, and he also awarded himself an Animal Hero Second Class, with his 9 huge dogs that were frisking around him, uttering growls that sent shivers down all the animals' spines. They all cowered silently in their places, seeming to know in advance that something terrible was about to happen. Napoleon stood sternly surveying his audience. Then he uttered a high-pitched whimper. Immediately the dogs bounded forward and seized 4 of the pigs by the ears and dragged them, squealing with pain and terror, to Napoleon's feet. The pigs' ears were bleeding, and the dogs had tasted blood, and for a moment they appeared to go quite mad. To the amazement of everybody, 3 of them flung themselves upon Boxer. Boxer saw them coming and put up a great hoof, caught a dog in midair, and pinned him to the ground. The dog shrieked for mercy, and the other 2 fled with their tails between their legs. Boxer looked at Napoleon to know whether he should crush the dog to death or just let it go. Napoleon, though, appeared to change countenance and sharply ordered Boxer to let the dog go, whereas Boxer lifted his hoof and the dog slunk away, bruised and howling. Do you guys understand what just happened there? The dogs were sent to kill Boxer too, but Boxer got the one up on them. But luckily for luckily for Napoleon, Boxer was none the wiser that these dogs were conspiring against him as well. Presently, the tumult died down, and the 4 pigs waited, trembling, with guilt written all over the line of their countenance. Napoleon now called upon them to confess their crimes. They were the same 4 pigs who had protested when Napoleon abolished the Sunday meetings. Without any further prompting, they confessed that they had been secretly in touch with Snowball ever since the expulsion, and they had collaborated with him in destroying the windmill, and that they had entered into an agreement with him to hand over Animal Farm to Mr. Frederick. They added that Snowball had privately admitted to them that he had been Jones's secret agent for the past years. When they had finished their confession, the dogs promptly tore their throats out. In a terrible voice, Napoleon demanded whether any other animal had anything to confess. The 3 hens, who had been the ringleaders in the attempted rebellion over the eggs, now came forward and stated that Snowball had appeared to them in a dream and incited them to disobey Napoleon's actions. They, too, were instantly slaughtered. Then a goose came forward and confessed to having secretly have 6 ears of corn during the last year's harvest and eaten them in the night. Then a sheep confessed to having urinated in the drinking pool, urged to do so, she said, by Snowball, and 2 other sheep confessed to having murdered an old ram, an especially devoted follower of Napoleon, by chasing him around a bonfire when he was suffering from a cough. Then all these animals were slain on the spot. And so the tale of confessions and executions went on until there was a pile of corpses laying before all the other animals. Napoleon's feet and the air was heavy with the smell of blood, which had been unknown there since the expulsion of Jones. When it was all over, the remaining animals, except for the pigs and dogs, crept away in a body. They were shaking and they were miserable. They did not know which was more shocking, the treachery of the animals, who were leagued themselves with Snowball, or the cruel retribution that had just been witnessed. In the old days, there had been scenes of bloodshed equally terrible, but it seemed to all of them that it was far worse now that it was happening amongst themselves. Since Jones had left the farm until today, no animal had killed another animal. Not even a rat had been killed. They had all made their way to the little knoll where the half-finished windmill stood, and with one accord they all lay down as though huddling together in warmth. Clover, Muriel, Benjamin, the cows, the sheep, and a whole flock of geese and hens, everybody indeed except for the cat, who had suddenly disappeared just before Napoleon ordered the animals to assemble. For some time nobody spoke. Only Boxer remained on his feet. He fidgeted to and fro, swishing his long tail to the sides and occasionally uttering a little whinny or surprise. And finally he said, "I do not understand it. I would not have believed that such things could happen at our farm. It must be through the fault in ourselves. The solution, as I see it, is to work harder. From now onwards, I shall get up a whole hour earlier in the morning and work harder." Then he moved off to his lumbering trot and made for the quarry. Having gotten there, he collected 2 successive loads of stone and dragged them down to the windmill before retiring for the night. The animals hovered over Clover, not speaking. The knoll where they were lying gave them a wide prospect beyond the countryside. Most of the animal farm was within their view, the long pasture stretching down the main road, the hayfield, the spinnery, the drinking pool, the plow fields where the young wheat was thick and green, and the red roofs of the farm building and the smoke curling of the chimneys. It was a clear spring evening. The grass and the busting hedges were glided by the level rays of sun. Never had the farm, and with a kind of surprise they remembered it was their own farm, every inch of their own property, never had any of this appeared to the animals so desirable of a place. As Clover looked down the hillside, her eyes were filled with tears. If she should have spoken her thoughts, it would have been able to say that this was not what they had aimed at when they first had set themselves years ago to work or to overthrow the human race. These scenes of terror and slaughter were not what they had looked forward to on that night when old Major first stirred into them the idea of a rebellion. If she herself had any picture of the future, it would have been of a society of animals set free from hunger and whip, all equal, working together according to the capacity, this song protecting the weak, as she had protected the lost brood of ducklings with her foreleg the night of Major's speech. Instead, she did not know why, they had come to the time when no one dared speak his mind, when fierce growling dogs roamed everywhere, and when you had to watch your comrades torn to pieces after confessing to shocking crimes. There was no thought of rebellion or disobedience in her mind. She knew that, even as those things were, they was far better off than they had been in the days of Jones, and before all of it was needful to prevent the return of human beings. Whatever happened, she would remain faithful, and she would work hard and carry off the orders that were given to her, and she would accept the leadership of Napoleon. But still, it was not for this that she and the other animals had hoped and toiled. It was not for this that they had built the windmill and faced the bullets of Jones's gun. Such were her thoughts, though, and she lacked words to express them. At last, feeling this to be in some way a substitute for the words she was unable to find, she began to sing Beasts of England. The other animals sitting around her took it up, and they sang it 3 more times over, very tunefully, but slowly and mournfully, in such a way that they never sung it before. They had just finished singing it for the 3rd time when Squealer, attended by 2 more dogs, approached them with the air of having something important to say. He announced that by a special decree of Comrade Napoleon, Beasts of the Nations had now been abolished. From now onwards, it was forbidden to sing this song. The animals were taken aback. "Why?" cried Muriel. "It's no longer needed, comrade. Beasts of England was a song of a rebellion. But the rebellion is long completed. The execution of the traitors this afternoon was the final act of destroying the rebellion. The enemy has both external and internal and has been defeated. In the Beasts of England, we expressed our longing for a better society in the days to come, but that society has been established. Clearly, this song no longer has any purpose for us. Frightened through which they were, some of the animals might possibly have protested, but at this moment the sheep set up their usual bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, which went on for several minutes and put an end to their discussion. So Beast of the Nations was heard no more. In its place, Minimus the poet had composed another song which began, Animal farm, never through me shalt come no harm. And this was sung every Sunday morning after the hoisting of the flag. But somehow neither the words nor the tune ever seemed to the animals to come up to be as good as Beast of England. Okay, guys, that is the end of the chapter. I want us to think really long and hard here. How is it that he is going about manipulating these guys so well? What is he doing how is Napoleon manipulating all these animals here? And why is it working? Why are the other animals falling in line? What tactics is he using? We'll talk more about that on this